All right, welcome everybody. This is Mike with Soundstage EDU, and we are live for the first, well, not for the first time, but we're live with a guest for the first time. We're streaming to Facebook, we're streaming to the Facebook page, we're streaming to YouTube concurrently. And what I am going to do while we're sitting here, I'm going to go to the Soundstage EDU page, and I am going to share this link into a couple of groups just to make sure everyone sees this, or as many people as we can see. So we'll go to our band parents. And while I'm doing that, today we're going to talk with Chris Wolf, as advertised. He is a percussion instructor from the Carolinas, and we're going to just have a nice conversation. We're going to address the young percussion instructor. That's the goal with this. And we are going to just discuss all things percussion. Because this time of year, with drum corps rolling around, the drum corps season is in full tilt. And there's just a lot of things that we want to talk about to, talk percussion. And this is a good time to do it. So I'm going to bring him in now. This is Chris, when I figure out how to do this. There you are, Chris.
Hey. Hey, everybody. My name's Chris Wolf. I am a professional percussion nerd. I mostly work out of North Carolina, but I do dance around a little bit of everywhere, and I love to nerd out about percussion. So I'm excited to be here and just chew your ears off for a little bit about it.
Yeah. So like I said, we talked a little bit before we went live about, the young percussion instructor, the overall, do we say health? The health of the percussion instruction industry. Because, we don't just stand in front of the kids and show them how to do stuff. We don't just show them how to play the cool lick, do we?
Certainly not all the time. Very rarely.
Right. So, let's just talk about why, let's establish the why of this discussion so we don't sound like, I never asked, I don't know how old you are, but I don't want to sound like two old guys yelling at the kids.
But we are. We just have to do it the right way.
Right. So, when you look at young percussion instructors today, what excites you about them?
So I love the situation I'm in now. I am currently the percussion guy at a school called Midway in North Carolina, and I am fortunate that I have two college percussion music education majors who are helping me out there. And the thing that excites me the most about working with them is how excited they are. There are some people that you can just tell love the activity and love the kids and want nothing more than to be a good educator. That's the thing, that they're excited to do the job and they're coachable. They're ready to learn about what they don't know.
And I want to point out how rare that actually is, because what I tend to run into. So you're in a good place, like you said. I would love to be in that spot too. What I tend to run into, and I haven't been a caption head in a while, but what I used to run into all the time was the kids that just wanted the position for the notoriety, just to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And then this could have been my youth getting in the way of seeing these people maybe doing things differently. But what I would get from these young instructors was that, they're there just so they could say they were there. They weren't there to actually convey any knowledge to these kids. They weren't there to actually educate. They were just there to show off. And what I was seeing largely was performative. And thankfully, at the time I was teaching, when I first started teaching, we did not have social media. That was not a thing. Towards the end of my time as an educator, we started to get some social media, not a whole lot. I think we were at the MySpace era at the time.
Oh man.
When I walked away and went back to school to get another degree, because that seemed like a great idea. I was at the University of Central Oklahoma, And they had this really new cool thing rolling out so that the kids could connect with one another on campus via the classes that they're in. So if you put in your schedule, you would get a list and you could become friends with, and it was called The Facebook. It was literally www.thefacebook.com. And I mean, I just absolutely dated myself. That's how old I am, y'all. I turn 50 next week. But, you know, what I ran into with a lot of these college kids, they were just there to say that they were there. And now we have a whole different batch of kids going in there. And I had this discussion with Chris before we ever got on here. I would assume that anyone that's listening to this and anyone that comes across this video will understand or know what pedagogy means. And, you know, that's just the science of teaching. Looking at a student and saying, this is what they're lacking, this is what they need next, this is what we're going to teach them, and this is how we're going to scaffold them to the skill level that we need them to go to. Now, what I'm seeing, I refer to as algorithmic pedagogy. And we're teaching kids, or maybe we're thinking along the lines of, let's get these kids to do the thing that's going to get the most likes on Instagram. And I think I said to Chris, the For You page is not your mentor. And that's kind of where I was, I don't know, that's a whole different thing. That may be a topic for another day. I don't know. But that's what I'm seeing a lot of with the younger percussion instructors. They're like, I saw this thing on YouTube, or I saw this thing on Instagram, or I saw this thing on TikTok. And I'm like, cool. How does that help them? How does that increase their skill set? How are you going to teach that to them? Because a lot of these kids may look at that and say, wow, that's really cool. And then what's in the back of their mind, they're saying, I could never do that. Because we're lacking something as basic as 8 on a hand, which we're avoiding because it's boring. So
one thing I'll throw in there, I tell my kids all the time, if your fundamentals are boring, you're playing them wrong.
Exactly. So
I am a diehard on simple exercises, right? Like 8 on a hand, bucks, double beat, that type of thing. You don't need some fancy exercise for it. Start with the basic thing, and when the kids start to get bored, throw variations on it.
So that leads me to this. Have you ever seen the Cavaliers in the lot?
It's been a while. I need to catch up on Cavaliers.
So aside from the book portion of their lot performance, their warm-up block is shockingly boring for a DCI level line. Why is that? And there's a reason why. There's actually videos out there that talk about why their fundamentals are so fundamental. And that's because if you can't do those fundamentals perfectly, and again, perfection's a myth, if you can't do those fundamentals with excellence, you're certainly not going to do the book with excellence, because the book is built upon those fundamentals. And, you know, you're an arranger. I was an arranger. When you're arranging a book for a percussion section, it is often dictated by the foundation and strength of their fundamentals. Absolutely. I'm going to take what I learned from them in a primary rehearsal block, where one of those first rehearsal blocks with them, where we're talking about fundamentals and we're learning fundamentals. And that's going to happen before I even sit down and start pinning the book. And I'm back when I wrote books, it was with a pencil and line paper. But I'm going to write that book based on what I saw in that rehearsal block. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm going to challenge them a little bit. And then the way this works, for those of you directors out there that are listening, when you're thinking of hiring someone, you want to hire someone that's going to be okay with adjustments going down the road. And you want an instructor that's going to come along and look at your line. They're going to look at your section and they're going to say, hey, they're getting better. They've mastered this fundamental. Let's go ahead and fold that fundamental into the next portion of the book, and let's make it more challenging for them. And that's how the whole evolution starts. Like I had my she's about to be 14 years old. I had her up here in my office the other day, and we were watching the first, recordings of drum corps shows for this season. And she was like, "Oh, that's so amazing. That's so cool. I can't believe we're going to get to go see that in person." And I'm like, "Yeah, about that. This show that you're seeing right now will be nothing like the show that you see in August. It'll be completely different." And she's like, "Why is that?" And I said, "Because there's growth in this period of time. They're going to grow from this point here until they get to Indiana, and it's going to be different. It'll be the same, but it'll be different." And that's kind of the same thing that should happen even at the high school level. As you're growing, the book should change and adapt to the skill set of the group. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Top of my head, I agree. I think the marching arts are a little bit strange in that they're the only ones where students rehearse the same music for multiple months, right? Mm-hmm. In school classes, concert band, hopefully they're only working on the same piece for a couple of weeks. Maybe as you're preparing for festival, you put a little bit more time in, but whatever. You usually don't commit a whole semester to just one piece of music, where marching band is different. So we should be teaching them multiple skills throughout the season, because we're educators first, right? We're not just trying to bring home trophies. We're trying to bring home big brain kids. So the skills should grow. The show should grow as the children's skills grow. Correct.
I agree with that. And I feel like a lot of times and again, I know I feel like I'm just railing on you young instructors, but there's a reason for that. We want to mentor you. We want to help bring you up and rise you up into the craft as well, because one of the things I see lacking is that we are lacking teaching the teachers. You guys are students too. Many of you are still in school when you're standing in front of your brand new high school line for the first time. And I know it's scary and it's weird, it's intimidating. I mean, you're practically a peer to these kids in most cases. And you know what? Kids are mean these days. They're rough. They're a tough cookie to crack. And you know what? First of all, you're not their buddy. You're their instructor. And you need to establish that right away. And I mean, I really don't know where I was going with that, but it's alien brainwave on y'all. But I mean, answer me this. What do you feel is the difference between a talented player and a developing teacher? Because they often show up in front of those lines for the first time. They're fresh. They're fresh out of drum corps. Maybe they just aged out, or maybe they let's ding on me for a minute. Maybe they blew their knee mid-season during June dailies and they had to bail. And so what am I going to do now? I'm going to go stand in front of a high school line as a 17-year-old kid. But there's some ego that comes with that. And there's some, I mean, my thought is a lot of these, and this is me speaking from my own experience and also from things I've seen. Those kids come fresh out of drum corps and they show up in front of a high school line and they have this mindset that these kids standing in front of me should act the same way my corps line did. And there's this friction that starts to happen almost immediately when they show up, and the kids don't like that. So what do you think is the difference between a talented player and a developing teacher?
So in this situation we're talking about, we have a young adult who is a very talented musician, but still a teaching novice. They're teaching for the first time or haven't taught much. I think that kind of answers itself. You are a great musician, and you should not be ashamed of that by any means. But teaching itself is its own skill. You're learning a new instrument on the spot in front of people. This instrument just happens to be your words to children. And that's okay. I think a lot of times when we see this ego, part of it is there are some just big-headed people out there. I'm not going to disagree with you at all. But the novice teachers, I think a lot of it is they're trying to save face. If I act tough, if I act big, the kids will believe that I'm big. First of all, no, they won't. Teenagers between 14 and 18 are the best BS detectors in the world. Mm-hmm. If you're not secure, they will know that. Whereas if you say, we're going to try this together. We're going to learn about this together. I don't know that I'm going to get it right the first time, but we will get it right the last time. Kids will respect that.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to go in there and say, I haven't taught much. I know how to make my hands do this. I'm still figuring out how to make your hands do this. Be them. You're right. You are staff. They are student. I shouldn't put them on top of each other because we're all equals, just different roles, right?
Right.
But be willing to admit to them that you are as new to this as they are. And that is okay.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that, because one of the things I've said from this platform all the time is that we're not just teaching them music. We're not just teaching them a show. We are giving them real, marketable life skills that they're going to take into their futures. And it kind of just reminds me of a thread that I was involved in not too long ago, where somebody said, I have a kid that's a brass instrument, and they want to go to this camp that's being run by the Blue Devils, but their dad is mad about it. Their dad said, music is just a hobby. And I was like, okay, let's back that up for a moment. And let's talk about the skills that this kid's going to learn. And I went in this long diatribe about how this is going to enhance their life work skills. And it was a good conversation. But I just lost my train of thought, which is fine. Y'all are getting to see me raw in all my scatterbrainedness. But
to the young educators, we're old. Get ready for this. It just happens as you grow up. Enjoy your thoughts while you still have them.
So, young instructors, it is okay to learn, because this is part of real life. You're going to get put into roles where you don't know. And I say all the time in my training role at my job, because I have a real job, I say all the time, never tell a client that this is your first day. In this situation, where you are shaping young minds and you yourself are young, it is okay to walk into that room and say, I am still learning as well. Because the teacher should be able to tell their students that they themselves are a student. Because this whole process of education is lifelong. It never ends. You will always be learning.
That doesn't just apply to these young students either. I've been doing this for the better part of 20 years now, and I still go in and say, let's learn about percussion together. Let's figure this out together. So I talked a little bit about my situation at Midway. All of us are put down as percussion instructor in our contracts. And so we're all equals. We don't really have a hierarchy, but one of them focuses on battery, one of them focuses on front, and I kind of tie it together. My battery guy taught me something new last week. That doesn't mean he's smarter than me. That doesn't mean I failed as a teacher because I don't know everything. It just means that he had different experiences than I did, and I got to gain something from it. I was telling Mike this before. A mentor said something to me, and I think it's true. The minute you are done learning is the minute you're done teaching. Get off the podium. You're not qualified anymore. As soon as you decide you don't want to learn, you are not prepared to teach.
Yeah, and that is more than accurate. That's more than true. I mean, hey, you're drinking a Bojangles cup.
I am.
I haven't been there in a while. Anyway, there's that ADHD again. But I mean, you always need to be learning. You always need to be a student. And as an instructor with students, you also need to let those students know that you're learning how to make them better. And they will respect that. I mean, like he said, these kids have phenomenal BS detectors. They know when you come in there flexing, because they're going to talk about you the minute you walk out if you do come in there flexing, and you're not going to know any better. But because of where this is being streamed, the primary group that this is being streamed in, everybody knows who Chris Green is. And yeah. I sat down and had a conversation with him at a local coffee shop here when he was passing through my town. And we were talking about, hey man, can you even play your instrument anymore? And I was just like, no. Can you? He's like, no. And that was where we started our conversation on, like, you don't have to be an excellent player to be an excellent teacher. Remember that, kids. Remember that, young instructors. You don't have to be an excellent player to be an excellent teacher, because you have to know how to diagnose what you're looking at. You have to learn how to break it down, and you have to learn how to, and as an educator, you're going to hear this you're going to hear this term a lot. You have to learn how to scaffold, build things on top of things to increase the skill set. You have to learn how to scaffold. The skill of scaffolding skill sets is far more valuable to a student than standing in front of them and showing them the coolest new hottest lick that you saw on Insta. That's another soapbox.
You need to have enough mastery over your instrument that you can model the basics of it. I am very big on modeling for students. Now, that does not mean playing the Blue Devil snare break while they sit there and wonder what you're doing. Modeling means showing them specific details of your playing. Like, I was never the best performer. I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to be an educator, and perhaps I should have focused a little bit more on my performance skills, but I focused on learning about pedagogy. But I knew that I could never teach my kids to get a good sound out of that snare drum if I can't get a good sound out of that snare drum. They can't create something they don't understand.
Yeah. And I feel most of my concentration in my whole percussion life, despite the levels that I marched at, despite the levels that I performed at, the most meaningful music education I ever got was on a concert stage. Learning how to get a good sound out of a concert snare is far more difficult than getting a good sound out of a marching snare. It's far more difficult. Mastering a clean, consistent buzz roll from a concert situation is far more difficult than playing a clean double stroke roll with 9 other guys or girls. It's more difficult. And there was it's just this, our craft is so vast, it's so far spread. And I guess this is another thing I want to say to the young instructors that might be listening. Don't neglect the other things, because they all tie together. They're all very important. They're all very hand in hand with one another. I truly believe that if you can't find your way around the back of a concert band arch, you're not going to be as proficient as you need to be on the field. You have to be able to play the whole gamut.
The way I think about it is you need to be a musician. Stop being a snare drummer. Stop being a quad player. I don't even want you to be a percussionist. I want you to be a musician who just happens to hit things. Use your ears. Know what sounds good.
I like that a lot. And as well as I do, that's something we fought as drummers coming up through high school. Oh, they're just drummers. And I even have it in my content where because I am a percussionist, I can make fun of drummers. And guess what? I do. I talk often about the color garden drumline dynamic because it's real. It's there. And I think I said in a blog post I made, and you have a drumline that's trying so hard to behave. That's real. That's real.
I certainly have some opinions on that topic too.
and it's funny. And I like to point that out. But yeah, be a musician. Don't be a drummer. Don't be a percussionist. Be a musician. I think that together, all of us working together could do some good work to deflate that stereotype a little bit and get rid of the whole drummer mentality.
And something for every musician, right? I would love to teach you everything I know, and I will do the best I can. But my headphones are covering them up. You have the 2 best teachers you'll ever have with you. You have this ear and you have this ear. Listen. Am I making good sounds? I don't know what a good sound is. You have no excuse anymore. YouTube. Go look up Andy Harnsberger and hear a good marimba sound. Go listen to Gary Burton and hear a good vibe sound. There's no excuse to not know what a good sound is anymore. If you don't know, you're not using these.
Yeah. And, as an audio engineer, that's something I train all the time as well, is I've had, young students in a tech booth in a theater, they'll ask me every time, how do you make it sound so good? Because I use my ears. My ears are the most important tool I've got. It doesn't matter that we have a $50,000 digital audio desk sitting on our tech table back here that can do literally anything. If you can't hear it, there's nothing you can do here. There's no light. There's no button that you can push that's going to make it sound good. Use your ears. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. That is excellent.
Yeah, I've been in Sibelius world forever. Like, that's how I write my music, and I've been dabbling with DAWs. It's not directly related to what we do, so if you don't know, any listeners, a DAW is a digital audio workstation. It's where you more manually put in musical details and you have finer control. And it's frustrating for me because my technical skills at that are not as good as my musical skills yet. But I can hear what's wrong and I can experiment and figure it out. There's another case where I am now a sixth grader in DAW world, and that's okay. That's something to embrace. Same way your first day in band camp teaching, you're going to be a sixth grader again. You have no idea how teaching works yet, and that's okay. Instead of being ashamed or scared of what you don't know, be excited about what you're going to learn.
Yeah. And that ties back to always be learning, always be a student. There's no shame in walking into your first rehearsal block and literally not knowing what you're going to do. I mean, that was me the first time I walked into a rehearsal block as an instructor at the age of 17. I was terrified. All these kids, all these young eyes looking at me. I was young too, but I mean, they were all looking at me for guidance, and I had no idea where to step off. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know at that time either that I could say I didn't know. That probably would have made it a lot easier. But I felt like I had to perform for these kids. And then here's the thing, young instructors, once you start performing for them, that's going to become the expectation. They're going to expect you to perform that you know what you're talking about. And at some point, that will catch up to you. At some point, that armor is going to crack, and the kid's going to see it, and the whole charade falls apart. And I hate to say it that way, but that's just what happens.
It comes down. We've dabbled on it a little bit. We've said it's okay to say I don't know, but even more important than that, don't make things up. Like, I'm going to tell a story from my first year as my first quote unquote real year as an instructor. My freshman and sophomore year, I kind of went back and helped with my high school a little bit. In hindsight, that wasn't the best decision. We can talk about that later if we want to. But my junior year, I started working with a school that I had no previous experience with. In our show, it decrescendoed the vibe part to in the music. Niente in Italian, or nothing. One of the kids asked me what that meant. I said nothing. They were like, I thought these terms were Italian. I couldn't remember, and I made a word up. I said nanners or something. And looking back, that was the worst thing I could have done. I could have been like, I don't remember. Let me get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the
kids
next
will
day,
respect that more than anything.
Mm-hmm. And thankfully, so as I mentioned, this school, the band director there took me under his wing. But what was even better about this guy is we were only 20 minutes from a university, so almost all of his staff were college-age kids. So what he did is he actually hired, I think on his contract, he was staff consultant. He was a retired band director whose job was not to work with the kids. It was to go watch the rehearsals and teach us. Best situation ever. And he came up to me and said, hey, I know why you did it. Tomorrow, you're going to go tell that kid, I'm sorry, I was wrong. That term is niente. If you make a mistake, own it, and they'll respect it.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I mean, I guess that kind of leads me to this. How should a young instructor mentally transition from being a performer, because it's where we all started, to being a teacher?
I wish there was a cut and dry blanket answer, but in some ways, let me finish before any of you make some opinions on what I'm about to say, because they'll come back around. I think some musicians are too successful that they don't understand a lack of success. Let's think of like Chino Hills. They are fantastic. From the time they start kindergarten, they're playing traditional grip on a tilted drum perfectly, right? They've had solid education every minute of their musical careers. If you took one of those kids and put them in a average high school that does not have those stabilizations, they won't know what to do because they've never been in that situation at all. I did not have the best music education until I hit college. And in some ways, that's a blessing because I know what it's like to not know how to hold the sticks right and not have anybody to tell me. So the biggest thing, the first thing you do happens before you even get in that band room for the first time. You're having a conversation. Okay, bye, Mr. Band Director. I'm looking forward to working with you at North-South High School, right? Your first job is get on YouTube and go find videos of North-South High School marching band. You need to understand the level those kids are at. If you don't know where they are, you can't tell them how to get where you want them to go. That is your first job, to understand where they are, not where you want them to be. And that's easier for people like me who have seen the entire spectrum of education. From, I've seen incredible groups with more text than they have kids. Someone's getting instruction all the time. And I've been a high school freshman without a percussion instructor that gets handed a piece of music and said, good luck. I don't know what this does. Figure it out. All right. You are responsible for teaching that entire spectrum. And the way I talk to a freshman holding a drumstick for the first time is very different than the way I would talk to this local college that I'm going to go do a master class with. I'll treat them with the same respect, but the way I describe my instruction is going to be different because it doesn't. I love these short little quotes that are easy to bite onto. Someone told me before, it doesn't matter if you taught it, it matters if they caught it. I can go talk to a kid about their fulcrum and their velocity and their finger hinges, and it doesn't matter that I did that if they don't know what those terms mean. You have to teach them where they are.
They've got to learn.
I think that's the biggest mistake novice teachers make, is overestimating how much of our field is obvious. Now, you've been doing this for so long, this stuff is second nature to you. But that sixth grader who's bringing in his bell kit and his practice pad for the first time, he has no idea what match grip is. He has no idea what the beat of the stick is. They don't know what a fulcrum is. You have to understand how much and how little they know. If you can't do that, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and even I ran into that as a nearly 50-year-old man who decided one day to make a platform on the internet. And I found my way into the percussion groups, and I found myself commenting on threads and using terms that were obvious to me. They were things that I was taught. They were things that I grew up with. They were things that I was learning at the, open and world-class levels of DCI at the age of 15. And they were they were second nature to me. And I was using terms like velocity, angle of attack, and things like that. And people were coming at me. They're like, what are you talking about? And it wasn't just people coming at me saying, what are you talking about? We're talking about high-level performers that were coming at me and saying, what are you talking about? And that's because we had a different vocabulary. They called it something different. And that's something that you need to understand, young instructors, that if you change regions, your code's going to switch. And you need to understand that and adapt to it. That way you're not using terminology that seems foreign to them. And a teenager is going to nod their head and pretend they know what you're talking about. And in that situation, no education is happening.
I have a similar story, but I can give like a specific anecdote that happened. I joined Midway halfway through last season. I had my daughter last spring, so I had to take some time off. I didn't really intend to teach last year, but this director called me and said, hey, I need some help. So I came, and I'm loving it there. I'm glad I did. First rehearsal, was outside, and the vibraphone player was playing on the higher end of the instrument, right? And it was Piercy. And I went to this young lady and I said, "Your sound is a little bit too bright. Can you fix that for me?" Of course, us as experienced musicians would hear, "My sound's too bright, soften up my hand, maybe a little less velocity, maybe even switch to some softer mallets," right? As experienced musicians, we know how to deal with that. This girl looks at me and says, "Well, the sun's shining on them. Of course they're bright." She had never thought of percussion sound in the terms of bright and warm. So it's like, okay, ignore that instruction for now. Next percussion section, I'll talk about that, right? I still do that with years and years of experience. You're always going to make that mistake. Just keep your eyes out for when you do make that mistake. It's okay.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's funny, but it's also just really telling about what you will deal with when you're standing in front of a young group of musicians, potentially for the very first time, and that it's okay to make those mistakes. You just move on. You know, the mistake isn't the problem. The problem becomes, did you grow from that mistake? Did you learn from that mistake so that you didn't necessarily make it again? Or maybe you gave yourself a little more grace if you do make it again, because I've made the same mistakes over and over many times in teaching. That's just going to happen because you have a tendency to revert back to what you think is obvious, and when in fact it's not.
And in some cases, it's not even a mistake. I used a word, it confused a student, so it gave me the opportunity to teach this topic. That's not a mistake. That's me teaching something and assessing how much they understand the topic. That's half of what pedagogy is, you know, I think we focus so much on the teaching, which is important, but assessing is equally important. Your ability to look at a student playing and know what's happening in their brain is an important skill to have in this industry.
Yeah, and knowing what you need to give them next. I mean, that is essentially the definition of pedagogy. Mm-hmm. And we need to do that, and we're not. We're just like, do it again. Do it again. No, that was wrong. Do it again. Great. You just said it was wrong. What was wrong? And yeah, go ahead.
This is a topic that I get on a lot. I've been experimenting with TikTok. I'm not good at it. I did a TikTok last week where I said, stop using the T word. It's a dirty word. Stop saying technique in your rehearsals. And that is an unpopular opinion. And I'll be honest, sometimes it was a little clickbaity. I'll own it. But the reason I say that is I'm pretty sure you could go to any successful high school and they hire a percussion tech whose only job is to stand in the back of the room yelling, technique, technique.
What does that mean?
It doesn't mean anything, man. Say things. Say something of value. Like, say, that wasn't right. You have 3 paths ahead of you. 2 of them are right. 1 is wrong. Do it again. That's the only wrong answer. You could tell them what they did wrong. Fine. Or even better, what about that was wrong? Make the kids teach you what happened wrong. Now you're assessing their oral skills. Stop saying it was wrong. Make the group agree and understand what was wrong. And the next rep, that is the focus. Every rep needs a purpose. And we were talking about that before, that reps are a tool. They are not a solution.
The rep is not the teacher.
What to get better at, they won't get better.
Right. The rep's not the teacher. Because it can be. That's the problem. The rep can be the teacher, and it can be a very, very bad and dangerous teacher. Especially if you've got, let's say you've got a group of 9 snare drummers. I don't know a high school in the world that would, but let's talk about a drum corps line. That you have 9 snare drummers, and they look good, but they don't sound good. Oh, guys, that didn't sound good. Do it again. No, do it again. No, do it again. But what that instructor failed to realize is that one snare drummer, 3 off the center, has this look in his face. He knows he's doing something wrong. He knows something's wrong. That's where your tick is. So you're not diagnosing that tick, and it just spreads out and gets exponentially worse from that drummer, from that snare drummer, because everybody's listening to him because we're listening vertically instead of horizontally down the line. we're not finding the center of the pulse, and that we're starting to get dirty. So the seasoned instructor is going to look at that one student and he's going to be like, his velocity doesn't quite match the guy next to him. That's where it's falling apart. Let's fix this. So what you did, because you repped it 50 times, is you repeated that mistake and reinforced that mistake 50 times. So everyone outside of that drummer has a time alignment issue now. And that's getting ingrained in their heads. So then when you suddenly fix it, you got to fix the dirt all over again because you have a whole different timing issue. So,
and there's a certain wisdom that comes with using reps well. Like even now, I will hear something, and at first I'll know I didn't like that without knowing what about it was wrong. Just own it. Say, hey, something was off there. Take another rep. Let's see what that was. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Just be like, I didn't quite catch it. Let's do that again. Sometimes it'll fix itself because 14-year-olds, they have the attention span of a gnat, right? They didn't think about the hand pressure on that triplet roll, and they remember to this next rep. Sometimes reps do fix things. Or let's say, at a drum corps level, hopefully the kids know the music when they show up. But high school, ideally they would, but maybe not. We're working on the opener. We're working on rehearsal marker B to C for the first time, and a kid ticks. They don't need me to say anything about that. They're sight reading. In that case, yeah, another rep is the right answer. Just give them another try. So the policy I've started to have is if a student makes a mistake once, I don't say anything about it. If the next rep they make it again, then I know that it's not a brain fart, it is comprehension. At that point, I will say something. I think it's important that we do give them the chance to fix it themselves and be their own problem solvers. It takes wisdom to know, is the kid just inconsistent or is he not understanding, right? And they'll come with experience as a teacher, but you do have to find that middle ground.
Yeah. And my example was specifically from something I actually saw, I think either last night or the night before. My daughter, who plays the flute and is in color guard, has taken a real liking to drum corps. So we were up here watching the newest lot videos of some of the elite groups that were in their warm-ups and playing through their book. And there was one passage by one group that just dirted out. I mean, it was nasty to me. I mean, she heard it too. She's like, well, that was dirty. And, she's going into 9th grade and she can pinpoint these things thanks to her critical dad. But we watched it again. And I pointed at one of the guys and I was like, it's him. He's the problem. That's where the fuzz started. And she's like, how can you tell? And I said, look at his face. He knew. Sometimes your student will wear it all over their face and they know they're the problem. And that's when you do it again to see if they correct it. Because at that point, they do know that there's a problem. You can see it. I could see it in his hands. I could see it in his face. And just when they were done with that rep, this student was just like, it was a micro expression, but it was there. He knew he did something wrong. And then they did that passage again, and guess what? It was better because he self-corrected. But then it happened again and somewhere else, and he made the same thing. So in that situation, I'd be like, okay, we have a recurring velocity issue in your hands. Is it your grip? Are your hands sweaty? What do we need to do to fix this? Because I don't think it's a performance issue. I think there's a weird glitch that's happening here, because at this level, he's not there because he's still learning stuff. He's there because he fits in. So there's something hindering him in that moment. And you as the instructor can step in and try to diagnose that problem and fix it before it becomes permanent.
Yeah. At the higher level, we can trust them more to solve their own problems. At the lower level, we can trust them to solve their problems, but that's a skill we have to teach them too. Like I teach my kids that there are 4 steps to fixing a problem. Noticing there's a problem, deciding what the problem is, deciding how to fix it, and then fixing it, right? It's not just but if I only give them one of those steps, I can't be upset that they don't figure out the other 3 by magic, right? If I say, your right hand crushed that triplet roll. Cool. That's great. That's only part of the teaching, though. Teaching them, okay, it's fast enough that maybe you should start using a little bit of arm to push some more velocity, or maybe you're tightening your middle fingers on the stick, whatever it is, right? You have to tell them not just what is wrong, but the how to fix. You know, just being able to hear dirt isn't teaching.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a question I had in our list of questions, like specifically, what are some common things instructors miss because they're only listening for dirt?
So we talked about this before the live stream. By dirt, do you mean specifically rhythmic dirt, or do you mean all the types of non-cleanliness?
I think at the young instructor level, I don't think they have words or definitions for the different kinds of dirt that we can perceive at our age in the game.
So I think part of it is we as a community just use that word wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When we say dirt, we mean not the same. Something about these 3 snare drummers, one of them wasn't like the other, or all 3 of them were different, whatever, right? They didn't agree on something. I think we use the term dirt to mean rhythmic inconsistency too much. But there's also timbre inconsistency and dynamic inconsistency, right? They can hit the drum at the same time, but if one of them's playing 3 inches and one of them's playing 9 inches, it's not going to sound like a snare line. It's going to sound like 3 people playing something. So I think one thing that they miss, because they're so focused on rhythmic clarity, they forget dynamic and timbre clarity. And far too often, they're so focused on playing well that they forget to teach how to rehearse well. That's probably the biggest thing I see. They're so ready to get into the music, specifically the literature, in this case, the book, right? They're so worried about getting to book, they don't teach rehearsal etiquette, and they don't take time to talk about, you use the term fundamentals, whether you call them fundamentals, basics, approach, whatever. You're not taking the time to teach them how to drum before you ask them to drum.
Right.
Those are the big 2. Something I tell young instructors all the time. These kids are going to play this show for, 4 or 5 months-ish? They're going to play legato strokes for the rest of their musical career. Which do you think is more important that they master?
Exactly. That is a excellent point. I've never thought of that. So you taught me something new. You know, and this is rehearsal etiquette. Let's talk about that. I mean, because that is a thorn in my side. I don't get contracted to teach lines anymore because I'm not visible on purpose. I don't have time for it. I don't know if I want that stress, but I do get called often to come help tune sideline ensemble sound systems. And I mean, because I'm an audio engineer by vocation. So I take great joy in setting those systems up and working with those students, because that sound system is their instrument and nobody's teaching them how to play it. So anyway, that's another conversation for another day. But I see so often horrible rehearsal etiquette in a lot of these young programs. And I'm sorry, guys, I hate to say it like this, but that comes from the top down. You don't 100%. You don't have bad kids. I look at, like, say, a local high school in my area. I live in the Kansas City area, so I've got a lot of high schools. You can pick any of them. And they all say the same thing about the school up the street in Missouri. That's Blue Springs. Everybody compares themselves to Blue Springs, and they say, I wish we could be like Blue Springs. Nobody has anything like Blue Springs. They must have all the money. They won the zip code lottery, blah, 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 blah. Hey, you know what? That's 14 and 15-year-old kids, too. They're no different than any of you kids in Overland Park or Olathe, Kansas. They're no different. Same DNA, same kids, same human beings. Blue Springs has a different rehearsal etiquette. You could be like them if you would take on that etiquette. And you know what? The kids want to. But instructors, it's up to us to build that culture of rehearsal etiquette within the kids. Because if you show them a reason for it, they're going to do it.
I have gotten kicked out of band directors' offices before because you and I are a golden nugget. We are band directors who are percussionists. We will never struggle to find work with band programs, right? Every director wants someone who knows about percussion and knows about band. That's so great. So I've been asked to go sit in on rehearsals where the percussionists aren't paying attention, and the director will come in, we'll talk about it after. And I can be a bit of a blunt person. I warn people of that up front. I am not trying to be rude, but if I have to be rude for you to understand what I'm trying to say, I will. Right? So they have said something along the lines of, yeah, my percussionists have such a behavioral problem. I have looked band directors in the eye and said, do they have a behavior problem or do you have a classroom management problem?
Thank you.
And I've been kicked out. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. Thanks for your time. Bye. Those teachers aren't coachable. They brought me in to tell them, oh, no, it's not you. Those percussionists are just awful. No. That I can talk about the concert band side of it another time or later in this talk if we have it. In a marching percussion world, rehearsal etiquette comes down to what do you, as the percussion instructor, percussion caption head, director of percussion, old man who talks about whatever your title is, right? Whoever is at the top, or if your percussion staff doesn't have a hierarchy like mine doesn't, what do all of our staff members agree that a good rehearsal looks like? If you don't know the answer to that, you cannot expect the kids to know the answer to that. So that is the first step, is knowing what you want good rehearsal etiquette to be. For example, the school I teach at now, the two band directors are great. This is no shade towards them. They are okay with a slightly more lax rehearsal than I am. So our percussion ensemble rehearsals are more intense, and then when we go to full ensemble, there's a little bit more calmness. That's not a complaint. That's just who we are as educators. Neither one's wrong. Just one of them isn't me. You have to decide what you want rehearsals to look like. That is the first step. If you don't know, the kids don't know.
Let's I didn't put a time limit on this, but we're approaching an hour, and before we lose all two people that are actually listening to this.
Hi, friends.
And there'll be more. I'm sure there'll be views after the fact. But let's give those that have listened for this long, let's give them some value that they can take back to their ensembles as soon as band camp starts. And this was something that I addressed at a group that I wasn't even overseeing. I just said it to them, and it changed everything. And again, it was one of those things that's like second nature to us, but no one had ever told these kids. And I have a feeling that's going to be a common theme for a lot of these programs that a lot of younger instructors are stepping into. And even you veteran instructors that are stepping into a new program, and you realize that you recognize deficiencies right out of the gate, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to fix this. Let me give you one simple thing that has helped me everywhere I've ever gone, and that's the aesthetic. That's the appearance of your group. That's the posture. That's their presence on the field. Because when your ensemble marches onto the field, when you come marching around that track for that very first football game or that first preview show that you do at the end of band camp, the way those kids enter the venue sets the tone for everything that happens. We as humans are going to, I'll just use a word, we're going to judge on appearance first. So if you come in looking strong, you come in looking together, you come in looking like a disciplined unit, everyone's going to assume automatically from that point on that you play well together before they ever hear the single first note. So let's talk about your approach to that aesthetic look, that posture, that hand placement, that uniformity, that thing that makes a drum line a drum line.
That's a good question. we kind of phrase this as if it's a pivot, but it's really not. It comes back to rehearsal etiquette to me. There are so many people who think they can go out on a field and adrenaline will turn them on. Adrenaline turns you off. If you don't stand straight, if you don't have your beads in the center of the drum, if you don't whatever during rehearsal, there's too much going on in a performance to remember to do it. So I don't even really talk about performing professionally anymore. If they rehearse like young professionals, they just won't even consider not being professionals during a performance. But the actual details of what looking professional is like, that's teaching. For example, I've gotten rid of the sticks in, sticks out. I'm more of a sticks up and sticks down kind of guy now. I define what that is. I define to them that, okay, there's a slight bend in the elbow, but we're not locking, but we're not turning. The bead isn't pointing down the seam of our pants. It's pointing forward a little bit or pointing backward if you are playing traditional, right? We define these things because, again, at a core, if I had to give one sentence that was my philosophy of education, is this: you cannot expect somebody to do something they don't know about. If you don't define it, you can't be upset that they're not doing it. So that's what the first week of band camp looks like. We define everything down to a T, exactly what we want. I want you to lock your knees and then bend them just a little bit. That's how our knees look. I want you to look straight forward, plus 5 degrees. That's what your head looks like. That's the difference between good and great. A good band can go out there and play well. A great program goes out there playing exactly the way they intend to. The difference between good and great is details.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. I mean, I walked by a line and I'm like, hey guys, can we, using their terms, can we lock in? Well, what do you mean? I want you to pick a point, and I want all of you on the snare line to stare at that point. Don't ever look away from it. Don't let anything distract you. Don't let me walking by come by and distract you. And then the next thing we did was, let's get all of our drums level, because half of them were leaning back, some of them were slouching forward, and I'm like, it seems silly, but this makes you guys look like a locked-in unit, and that's what we need to do. And then instantly people were complaining, like, oh, this hurts my back. And I'm like, well, it's because you're lazy and you don't want to stand with the proper posture that mom and dad have been asking you to stand with for most of your life. So let's work on our posture. Let's do some stretches. Let's do some exercises. Let's work on that core. And then magically, everything got better. Oddly, because they looked like a unit, they started to play like a unit. It's amazing. We cleaned them up without having to actually clean them up. We cleaned them up because we fixed their posture. We fixed their focal point. We fixed the way they looked, so there were no more distractions. If you don't look the same, you're generating distractions that will distract you, that'll distract the person next to you. You got people looking around because someone's looking around. I'll never forget my very first venture into drum corps. I was 14 years old, was in Montgomery, Alabama, at an old defunct drum corps called Southwind. I don't know. Are they still around? I don't think they are. But
I don't think so. I think they were folding as I started.
Yeah, they went to Louisville, and then they went to somewhere in Colorado. But that's where I started as a young kid, sitting next to kids from Florida State University and University of Florida. I felt like a midget amongst giants. It was terrifying. But I will never forget standing in the gym while we were doing calisthenics, because, exercise and mobility is important, guys. But they were so, like, the strongest thing I remembered was how the movement staff were very determined to make sure that we all looked the same, that we all look like a unit, and you could not look around, because back then corps were 128 people, and you could have one movement tech standing in front of this gymnasium full of kids, and they will catch one person that shifts their eyes in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. It's that important, because now you're a distraction and you're distracting the whole group. And it's so much of a distraction that this one person that's overseeing all of this saw that one person move. And you would hear it all the time. Stop fidgeting. Don't move. Lock in. Well, that wasn't our term back then, but it was stop fidgeting. Stop moving. Don't move. And that was like so fundamental to everything we did. People look at these groups and they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. They move the same. They sound the same. They're magicians. And that was my viewpoint as a young teen. The first time I saw a drum corps, I thought these guys were magicians. No, they weren't. They were disciplined. They looked the same. Their aesthetic made them what they were to me. And the same thing will apply to your judges. It's going to apply to your audiences that you play in front of. Even and I'm only going to say this because it's, Independence Day weekend, and some of y'all are going to go do a parade. It matters in a parade. If your posture and your aesthetic and your approach to what you're doing is a performance and not just oh my God, I need to survive this parade because it's 115. But if you're out there, this is a performance, those things aren't going to get to you as much. They're not going to distract you. And you're going to put on a performance that people will remember. And I told my kids today on our way to the gym this morning that I thanked my oldest daughter. I'm like, thank you for not being in a program that's doing a parade this weekend because, oh my God, I don't want to do it. And she was like, cool. I was like, I did 3 parades on the 4th of July once in one day. We went to Montgomery, we went to some small town, then we went to Birmingham and did a parade back to back in full uniform. And we did it like a drum corps because we were. And I honestly think that's the only reason we got through that was because we had that discipline and we were, again, kids' term, locked in to what we were doing that made our performance just that much better. And that's why, I mean, this does tie back to rehearsal etiquette. The time that I got called out because I looked to the person to my left, even in calisthenics, we were performing. And that was the mindset that we needed to have all the time, that we were one cohesive unit doing the same thing at the same time all the time. Which kind of brings me to another culture point, I guess. Especially in drum lines, your section needs to do things together. Instill that culture in your kids. And you probably already do, but I only bring that up because I saw it lacking in a couple of places I've been. I mean, they were just the percussion section. They were just the drum line. There was no section-y things going on, and I think those are so important. Like, when I was growing up, and maybe this was the same for you, Chris, that whatever instrument you played, that was your section. The snare drummers did stuff together. I was a tenor drummer, so the tenors did stuff together. We even, at the drum corps level, we even slept next to each other on the gym floor. We did everything together, and that is so important culturally for your group that I feel like we need to bring that back because I feel like it's lacking.
I don't know that I agree that it's lacking. I think it's done differently now. For example, my group has a group me, or for those of you who don't know, it's a chat room, and I'm in it mostly for supervision. Parents are in it, but parents can't post, right? For one, I'm doing a CYA. I don't want to be accused of talking to teenagers without their parents knowing what we're talking about. But those kids share percussion memes all the time. They're still communicating. It's just, I think our world has gone to more virtual hangouts than in-person hangouts. But I think part of what you're getting at here, I'm just going to kind of generalize it, is that it's my job to teach them about music, but it's my obligation to teach them about life. And part of that is learning how to make friends, learning how to work with others, learning how to understand how people from different types of life can aim for the same thing. I think that's part of what this hanging out does, and encouraging them to be decent and friends with each other, is we have to teach them how to function as people. And part of that is being civil and enjoying each other.
I think that and this is me using educator terms, is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous conversation. I'm old. I know it. I see great value in synchronous conversation. Do I participate in asynchronous conversations? Absolutely. I send people text messages. I send people DMs all the time. But nothing beats the value of synchronous conversation. And I think that's part of what I'm getting at is yeah, they're communicating, but are they getting FaceTime? Are they getting, as an old guy would say, belly to belly and having a conversation? Are we growing in that way? That way, when we show up on the field, we've already had the time together and we're in sync, which as percussionists, being in sync is very important.
It's 99% of what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like, I feel like, and this is generational. I feel like as a generation, these kids are missing out on that synchronous side of life because we can, I'll chat with you later online. It's not the same thing. We're not having the same bonding moments that we need to have as a section because music is a group activity. We need to do it as a group. We need to do it from a shared heart, a shared mission, a shared understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. And that's why if you look back at some of those older groups, they just felt different. And it's not because they were better. It's not because they were from the 1900s. It's because they had a different level of bond with the other musicians. And again, that could just be old dinosaur talk again. I don't know.
I see where you're coming from. I do, for one, this comes down to us as educators as well. Are you giving them time out of your day to do these types of things? Yes, it would be great if I heard that, the snare line went to the movies last week or they went bowling or something. But I can't necessitate that they do that for many reasons, right? What I can do is every band camp, we take, instead of an hour lunch, we take an hour and a half lunch, but 30 minutes of that are doing something together that is not musically related.
Yeah.
Ideally, they'll also do these types of things outside of the band room, but I can make sure that they do in the band room. I can get it started. We're teaching the whole person, not just the musician.
Right.
We're not just a music teacher.
And I think culturally, that's something, as a kid, from my perspective, those things just happened organically. They just happened on their own. But again, different technology landscape back then. We didn't have cell phones. I didn't have my first cell phone until I was 21 because I couldn't enter into a contract. And it was like $900 deposit. But anyway, everything was different back then. And we had no choice but to bond. We had no choice but to reach out. And those things just happened on their own without an instructor being involved, without a teacher being involved. We just wanted to hang out with our friends. And I feel like that now at the place in the post-COVID era, we need to encourage people to foster those relationships because for a long period of time, and especially in some of these kids during their most preliminary development times, we taught them how to avoid. We taught them how to avoid hanging out. We taught them how to avoid going to people's houses. We taught them to avoid being in public. And we adopted this new technology, and it wasn't new technology. We just amplified the technology of communicating asynchronously. And that's the status quo now. Is there anything wrong with it? No. But I think that as humans, we can do much better. And as educators, we can encourage those kids to have those relationships outside of the band room, outside of the drumline rehearsal, outside of the school, and grow as people and not just as students.
Yeah, I agree. There are, and the young educator may be listening to this and be like, well, I don't have time for that. They don't know their opener. Like, I consider life skills to be a part of the family of fundamentals that we teach. You don't have time to not teach these things. The better your students are at communicating with each other, the faster they'll learn. It is an investment to be better later. And of course, all the very important reasons to do this outside of music, it will also help your musicianship. their musicianship.
Yeah.
Being a better person makes you a better musician.
And this is a total drummer thing, but I can't tell you how many times I was hanging out with my drumline friends where it turned into a spontaneous rehearsal.
Oh, every time.
Everybody showed up with their drum pads and we're sitting on someone's driveway somewhere just hacking away. And you know what? Even if we're playing some nonsense, it's still getting in here. That timing synchronicity is starting to line up because you're playing with your friends and you're learning your quirks, because we're not perfect. We don't have timing on lock all the time, but we're learning where our peers drift inside of that timeline. And when we understand and we start to synchronize where that drift happens, we start to clean up without having to invest in the rep monster, because we understand one another better. We listen better because we're playing on a park bench somewhere, or we're playing on a drum pad somewhere, or we're doing that one thing that used to drive me nuts when I saw a bunch of kids playing on a concrete curb on the side of the street, marring up the beads of their sticks. But
play with the butts at least, guys. Come on.
But I mean, to me, that is what made us what we were back then. I'm not saying we were any better, but I feel like there was a little more clarity 20 or 30 years ago because we were constantly learning from one another, because we were constantly engaged.
I think I grew the most as a musician because in my university, we had the university center, which was just kind of like the little restaurant hangout place, and the music building was right beside it. And every day after classes, we'd all get together and we would take fundamentals. Like, we would take 1 month that was 8 on a hand. How are we going to trick each other with 8 on a hand? Okay, we're going to play 8 on a hand, but we accent every 4 notes, or we crescendo, decrescendo. And we would come up with the craziest variations, and we would try to stump each other. And it was a game. Who can I trick this week? It forced us to not play the same thing all the time, which is a topic I would love to discuss sometime. It taught us to adapt quick. It taught us to use our ears, right? You're right. The more we drum together, the better we're going to drum together. It sounds obvious when we say it that way, but a lot of people don't really think about how important it is.
Yeah, on that whole fundamentals thing, one of the last drum lines I ever taught, we didn't do 8 on a hand. We did 12 because our show was primarily in a triple meter. So we did 12 on a hand. And we had so many variations. We used to drive people nuts because we would play that for what felt like hours. Like, we'd go into a warm-up block before a game or before halftime at the end of the first quarter, and we would just rep 12 on a hand for what felt like an hour. But you know what? They were better for it. And because we did it with a varying grid, 12, 9, 6, 3. And sometimes we would shift that grid between sections within the drum line. And, the snares would be at 12, the basses would be at 6, the tenors would be at 9. And we would just flip-flop them. And we had hand signals that would signal who was doing what. It was really cool. And then there was decrescendo and crescendo. There was, this one would play at a level 3 and this section would play at a 12. And that variance made everyone focus so much more on that fundamental that from that point forward, every attack that they ever played was on point. And that's because we reinforced fundamentals to the point that even the listening audience was being annoyed by it. But because we had so much variance built into it, the students didn't get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, again, old-fashioned, I get it, but nothing beats fundamentals.
That's my preferred approach too. The basic version of an exercise, I want them to be able to understand on the first rep. Maybe not play it perfectly. Maybe there's stuff to work on, but they understand the exercise the first time.
Yeah.
Well, we have so little time with our kids. Why would I waste time learning, the ditty or Susie or whatever the cool new thing is? How about I just get them better at the thing I want them to get better at with the least time investment possible? Because it already takes a long time to do this, and you already don't have enough time. So just why are you putting more on your plate when you don't need to.
Yeah. So let's talk about this one, because I'm not going to say kids are fragile, but the mindset is a little bit. So why do some students shut down under intense instruction? What's your read on that? And how can we address it or fix it or mitigate it when it starts to happen in front of us?
I will admit, I am of two minds of this. I do agree that skin is getting a little bit thin at the younger ages. I think there's a number of reasons for that, and many of those reasons I don't think are young people's fault. But the why it's happening can get a bit political, it can get a bit heated, so won't go into the details of why I think it's happening, but I do agree that it is. However, on the flip side, I do see many educators, young and old actually, this is one that doesn't seem to have a difference based on age, that think they're being intense when really they're just being rude.
Yes.
You can be intense without being negative. For example, if I went up to Tommy and said, that triplet roll sucked, and walk away, there was nothing educational about that. There was nothing valuable in that. If I go up to Tommy, I could say, that triplet roll was rough. Let's talk about why. Or if I know he knows why, hey, you're better than that. Play it the way you know you're supposed to. That wasn't a question. There was no room for negotiation. It was still a direct instruction. It was still intense, but it came from a position of positivity. It wasn't, you suck. It was a, you're too good to do it that way. Intensity, I am an intense rehearser. Honestly, the directors at the school I work with, they look at me like I've got three heads in full ensemble because I'm jumping around, I'm cheering. I'm like, yeah, trumpets, that is what Mercado sounds like. I love it, right? Stuff like that. I am very intense, but it is always from a position of positivity. Now, I'll admit, I had my negative spurts when I was younger, sure. And sometimes it's not even positive, it's just neutral. For example, I was working with this director. It was their first year at this school. And they were just, I don't want to say gentle, because that's not the right word. They were too passive.
Yeah.
And it was the third day of band camp. These kids don't know her yet. They don't know me yet. Fine. Every rep, they would start talking about things with good intention. I could hear most of these conversations. Hey, remember A flat, not A natural. Oh, remember our horns are up. The kids meant well, right? And that's another position I try to take. If they're spending their time in marching band, they probably want to be good at it. They're probably not being bad on purpose. There was too much talking. The director said, everyone, please stop talking between reps. Fine. Second time, I told you not to talk between reps. Third time, I said, you were given clear instructions to not talk between reps. Shut your mouth. That was not rude. That was not negative. That was clear. So part of it, I think, is the misinterpretation of how you use things. And in hindsight, I could have been stern. Maybe shut your mouth was a hair on the negative side. I'll own that. Perhaps I shouldn't have used those words, but my message was clear with strong intent. Those kids complained, and I will say, I'm not teaching there anymore. That's all I'll say about it. Intensity, someone said something to me a while back, and I think it holds true with a lot of our younger students these days. Accountability looks like discrimination when you're not used to it.
Yes, that is so true.
That's true. And I think we have to teach them the difference. I am holding you accountable because you're awful. That's not accountability. That's just being a jerk. I'm holding you accountable because you deserve to do this well. Very similar, but those mean a completely different thing.
Yeah, accountability comes up a lot on the things I discuss, and that when accountability comes up, I already know that I need to brace myself for a lot of backlash because it always comes.
Oh yeah.
But some of my old students from the last place I taught, do follow me here, and I kind of wish they could hop in and validate this point about intensity, because I was exceptionally intense. I mean, it came to a point where they were using that word often. We need more intensity. And I mean, and it's funny. And some of them, I see it mirrored in some of them now in their current careers. Like some of them are business owners. Some of them are band directors. And some of them are like consultants at a very high level. And I see them mirror those things back to me, or they say, hey, thanks for teaching me this. Because of you, I'm where I'm at today. So I would love to ask them, despite my intensity, was I ever actually rude? Was I mean to you? Or do you feel like it had a purpose? Because I got a lot of backlash from parents. They hated it. Like that I was too much. He's too hard on them. I got a good laugh from one of them not too long ago that says, oh man, I remember those days at band camp when you'd made us run till we barfed. Now today, that would not fly. But that was the kind of intensity that we were operating at a long time ago. And you know what? That was a bit much. I can admit that kid should have said something to me, but he didn't. He just he gritted it out and ran till he barfed. But you know what? I never had a kid drop out of a parade or a performance or get too hot ever after doing stuff like that. The intensity had a point. The intensity wasn't to lord over them or, prove to them that I was better. It had a point because we were conditioning them to do the hard activity that they were about to do. And we are so quick to say, oh, this is really hard on you. Maybe you should take a break. And we're not developing grit. And when those kids grow up and they get into the mean, rude world out there and they start working, they're not going to be able to just sit down and wait it out. They're just going to have to do it. They're going to have to suck it up. And that's one of those things that people don't like hearing. Suck it up. They're going to have to. They're going to have to suck it up and do it. And sometimes I feel like, especially as a percussion instructor, and because you're dealing with a unique group of kids that are, let's be honest, they're different than the wind kids. They're different than the guard kids. Yeah. They're different. And I'm not going to say one instrument's going to be the leader of this world over the other instrument, but let's be honest, some of those stereotypes are absolutely true. And a lot of your percussionists are going to be natural born leaders because they're just louder people. Mm-hmm. And, the loudest person in the room isn't always the leader, but the loudest person in the room does have influence. And
absolutely. For better or for worse.
Yeah. And those kids need to learn how to work with the tools that they're given. And, we need to develop that grit. We need to my boss said this to me one time on Facebook because I made a comment about an event that we were about to load in. It was going to be a really hard day. And I was just kind of a lighthearted, we're getting ready to set up at the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City. It's going to be a tough day. And my boss just like, I believe in you. You can do hard things. And it made me laugh because I'm like, yeah, he's right. I can do hard things. And we need to let these kids know that, hey, yeah, this is hard. But you can do hard things. You're going to be great at it. And that's where the positive intensity comes in. You're going to be great. Yeah, it's going to be hard. And we're going to be right there with you, and it's going to suck. But hey, you can do it.
I had my marimbist. This program is still very much developing. She had a bit of a strange permutation pattern. She said, this is really hard. And one of my young staff members heard, okay, how do I teach her how to do this? I was like, and he started talking. I was like, hold on, yes, it's hard. That just means you're going to be even that much more proud of yourself when you nail it for the first time. Something being hard is why we do it, not why we avoid it.
Hard is the point.
But yeah.
Without those hard moments, we don't learn, we don't grow. It's supposed to be hard. And we don't need to be afraid of that. Like, oh, this is too hard. Oh, okay, let's make it easier. No. How can we help you understand what's in front of you? Where are you struggling with specifically? What can we do to bridge that gap?
And a lot of times it feels weird. And that is one of those times where reps is the correct answer.
Yeah.
I'm a computer scientist. I'm a software engineer, so I talk in tech terms a little bit too much. I tell the kids, you just have to go play it so much that your brain downloads it. You just have it ready to go.
That's true. Repetition. I'm okay. Repetition can teach, repetition can reinforce, but the repetition is not your mentor. I will stand on that.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think I said it to you before this. Practice makes permanent.
Right.
So whatever you're practicing is what you're going to keep doing. That can be good and that can be bad.
Yeah. So if you're what you're repping, you're doing it well, keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Make it, download it into your muscle memory, just like Chris said. Download it. And that's what you need. I mean, my 13-year-old turning 14-year-old daughter going into high school, she has a flag sitting by the front door because she wants to be in color guard. And she goes out there all the time and practices those pop tosses till she's blue in the face. And you know what? Because I see the work ethic in her. I mean, we have a pretty standard 13-year-old work ethic going on, but I see that desire, that want to do it better, that engagement with a lot of the things that I do and that I consume content-wise. And I see her latching onto this stuff, and I'm seeing that starting to really blossom in her. And when she shows up at band camp, I would not be surprised if she has a better handle on what she needs to do as a freshman than all the other freshmen, and maybe even some of the upperclassmen. I would not be surprised at all. And I'm not saying she's going to be better because she's my kid and because she has my lineage. That's not it. But I see the desire in her. And drummers, I feel like alien brainwave. I feel like I can say this because I feel like a lot of you percussionists out there know who this is. What's his name? Estepario. He's a YouTube drum set drummer. And he has said over and over and over again that I am not naturally talented. I wasn't born knowing how to do this. I worked my butt off. He's a COVID era drum set drummer. He's got hands that I can't even explain. He's got rhythmic control that I can't even comprehend. He's got limb independence that no one has ever had before. And he will tell you that this wasn't something I just knew how to do. This was not natural. I am not talented. I am practiced. I am rehearsed. I practice it until I do it right. And then I keep practicing it until it's cemented in my brain. That's why he is.
What is the old adage? Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. Something like that.
Yeah. That makes sense. And
if I go out there and play, I don't know, some marimba piece, I've really been enjoying Restless lately. I'm not going to go get one rep of that and be like, all right, put me on the stage. I'm going to play it until I can play it without thinking about it. Right? I want there to be as minimal of a chance of not playing it well as possible.
And this brings me to the young learner. This is something I'm seeing in a lot of our youth right now, and this may be a good point for a lot of you young instructors to listen in on, is I'm seeing a huge rise in young students, young learners, young performers, even just young academics that will approach something difficult and they'll give up almost right away because they can't do it. And you're going to run into that inside of the performing arts. You're going to run into a kid, you're going to give them a piece of music and they're going to be like, oh my God, I can't play that. And they've already got that mindset before they ever sat down and tried. And I think it was Henry Ford, right, going way back to the old guys, that said, if you say, what does he say? If you believe that you can't, you're most certainly correct. Something along those lines. If you believe you can't do it, you're probably correct. But if you believe you can, I believe that you can do it. And it's a lot of, I see it even in my kids, that they're like, oh, this is so hard. I can't do this. Well, have you even tried? Because because you want to do it doesn't mean you're going to do it well. Because you want to do it's the first step. And now that you learn it and put in the work, put in the reps, you will be able to do it. I guarantee it. Every one of these kids.
Something else that I think young educators are really bad about, and they're shooting themselves in the foot and they don't even realize it. I've stopped telling my kids that something's going to be hard. If they say it's hard, I will hear them and acknowledge that, but I don't tell them. I learned this because I was very fortunate. I got to go watch a very successful middle school band director's woodwind class. And it was the day that he was going to teach clarinets to go over the break. And if you've ever talked to a middle school band director, that's one of the first quote unquote hard steps for a clarinetist. He said, okay, clarinets, we're mostly percussionists here. If you don't know what going over the break means, you can play with certain fingerings to get a certain range out of the clarinet. You press what's called the register key, and it unlocks the next range. And we call that going over the break. The break is where you start using that register key. And it's considered hard by a lot of teachers. This director said, okay, can you play that A for me? Okay, now we're going to play that E above. Notice it's the same fingering, but you add your thumb. Didn't even say register key. He just told them exactly, physically what he wanted to do. They played their E with a good sound because he was a great teacher, taught sound first. Then they tried that E, and it was weak. He was like, oh, remember, every time we play, we use big belly sound. They played it again, they nailed that E, and he moved on. And I asked him, why wasn't that hard for them? He looked me dead in the face, and this sentence changed the way I taught. He said, because they didn't know it was supposed to be hard.
Mm-hmm. I kind of
stop setting them up for failure by telling them they're going to fail. Stop it. Just tell them to do the thing.
I have a very similar story from the last station I held. I am a big believer in percussion ensemble. Yes. I feel like you're doing your students a disservice if you don't allow that into your program, because after marching season, most of your percussionists are sitting back there bored. And guess what? That's where you get your behavioral problems, because they're bored. But I had a school that had never done percussion ensemble. We had all the instruments, but they never really did a true percussion ensemble piece. And I'm like, we're going to do that. So what did I do? I did what all of my colleagues said was absolutely insane. And I brought in David Maslanka's Crown of Thorns for high school kids to play. I didn't prep this. I just brought it to them. I was like, here's what we're going to learn this spring. And we're going to perform it at this, or what we're going to learn this winter, we're going to perform it at the spring concert. It's going to be great. It's one of my favorite pieces of music. I love it. It covers all the moods and all the feelings. It's great. We're going to love it. Most of these kids at this point were drummers, 100% drummers. And I put them all behind keyboard instrument. And they all just looked at it like, and then I looked over at the other kids, and I looked at those kids' parts, and they're like, Mike, we can't play this. I'm like, I know, because we haven't rehearsed it yet.
You can't play this yet.
And so, you know what? They knocked it out of the park. I will never forget that moment sitting in a cafeteria at a high school that was, forgive me for saying it, at the time known as being in the nexus of the ghetto of Oklahoma City. And these kids played Maslanka's Crown of Thorns like a college level ensemble. No one ever told them it was difficult. No one ever told them it was hard. We just did it. And they owned it. They found out later how difficult that piece of music was, but not while they were learning it.
And they felt good about themselves when they found out too.
Yeah. And everybody was
this
like,
kind of circles.
They're all like,
circles back to what we were talking about earlier.
I'm like, I didn't teach that to them. They learned from our culture and our philosophy of excellence. That's how they did it. It wasn't talent. We practiced our butts off to do it, of course, but they did it.
It circles back to what we were talking about earlier with rehearsal etiquette. I want to generalize that to just expectations in general. If you set and communicate expectations in a positive way, i.e., you deserve to meet these expectations, as long as they're realistic. If I expect my sixth graders to play Merlin at the end of the school year, I'm probably going to be disappointed, right? As long as the expectations are physically possible, the kids will want to meet them. You don't spend ridiculous numbers of hours doing something and not want to be good at it. That'd just be stupid. These kids want to do well. Give them the tools and the environment to make it possible. That's it.
Just that phrase right there, give them the tools and the environment to make it a reality, is something that I touched on a long time ago. And it was about, and this is the emotional part. Sorry, guys. This is about the importance of what we do. A lot of these kids that are coming to you, young instructors, do not have the greatest home life. This is their escape. What we do as educators, what we do in the fine arts, in many cases, will save these kids' lives. I can't tell you how many adults I've had land in my TikTok saying music saved me. I'm not saying you need to go out there and save these kids. I'm not saying you need to go out there and make the world's greatest performers. I'm not saying you need to go out there and have the hottest drumline marching down the street. What I am saying is that we as educators have a responsibility to create an environment for these kids where those things can happen, where they are possible. You don't have to know their home lives. You just have to be able to provide and create a safe space for them to develop the life skills that they need to be successful when they leave your care. Like a professional athlete, 99% of these kids are not going to be professional musicians. They're not going to be educators. They're not going to be teachers. A lot of them will never pick up their instrument again once they leave high school. But while they're there with you, you have a responsibility to provide an environment for them where they can grow, where they can learn, and where they can turn into a future human that's going to benefit all of us.
And that applies musically and just in terms of life.
Yeah.
I have a similar story where I was a band director for a while. And in the school I was working with at this time, they fed the kids lunch during band camp. Sure. Some groups do, some groups don't. You know, I can see both sides. This kid had never played before, but he was working his butt off, and I pulled him aside one day, and I was like, "Hey, man, you're working really hard. I'm proud of you, but why? Like, why are you here?" He wouldn't answer that question the first day. It was like the last day of band camp. He was like, "Because this is the only chance I get to eat." He joined band camp because that meant he got lunch that day.
My gosh.
That kid, I was so excited. Last this past May, I went and watched his senior recital. He just graduated with his degree in music education. So proud of him.
That is awesome. See, folks, this is what we're doing. We're not just teaching
your
music.
Kids.
We're developing humans.
Your second most important job is to teach the kids. Your first most important job is to make sure they're safe. That's what we did for this kid. I don't care if he never played a single note in time. That kid would have been in my band program with no fees until he graduated high school. No questions asked. It comes down, I had a great mentor. And I think a lot of young educators don't think about this before they go in the band room for the first time. He was the same, he was the staff consultant I talked about earlier. He pulled me aside before I even met the kids, and he said, "You're very knowledgeable about this field. You've talked about it a lot. You understand this field. The kids don't care. They don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. If you love those kids, they will love working for you."
And what those kids want to know is this strange adult that's standing in front of them, can they make me better? They don't care what you know. They don't care what you did. Can you make me better?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good note to end on, because we're at an hour and 40 minutes. And eventually my family's going to be like, hey, are you coming back down? And
I actually just saw in the corner, my wife was like, "Can we get lunch today?"
Yeah. So I'm I will end this, and then we can hang out here and talk once I stop the stream and just get our next game plan. But
before you do end it, I do have like one overall message I want to get out. If you don't pick up anything from this session, but one thing, get yourself a percussion mentor. Not just a band mentor. You need someone who understands teaching percussion. If you don't have that, I'm that. I'm going to give Mike my email address after this. If you need a percussion mentor, talk to him. For one, I'm sure he'd be happy to chat with you too. And he'll send you my email address too. We will get you where you're trying to go.
Yeah. We're here to help you. Not just, annoy you with hours-long videos. Although we love doing it. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to thank you all that have passed through and listened, and for all the people that are going to come and listen. I don't know. Most people don't even make it to the end. But if you do, thank you. Know that we're going to, at Soundstage EDU, we're going to continue to build resources for you. I am a percussionist. I'm an audio engineer. I'm going to have resources for those items at some point on our website. But, right now we're heavily focused on the structural support, the parents that are helping you guys, the directors, the staff. We're here to help you. And I want to involve Chris on the percussion side as much as we can, and however he can help. And, couple old guys talking about percussion. We've been around for a while, and we've seen a few things in the educational field. And, again, the point of all of this is to enrich the kids, and that's what we want to do. So until the next time, like I said, Chris, I'm going to end the stream, and then we'll hang out here for a minute and say our goodbyes. But everyone else, thank you very much for being here. And as I always like to say, let's raise the bar together.